Imagine you are chained in a dark dungeon, right?
Oh, yeah. Not a great start.
No, definitely not. You're facing this brutal execution, and the judge looks down at you and asks if you deny the crime.
And, I mean, human nature dictates a very specific script for that exact moment.
Right. You lie, you beg, you desperately search for some kind of loophole just to save your own
You
skin.
do whatever it takes to survive.
Exactly. But what happens when a man looks an absolute tyrant in the eye and simply says, "I do not"? Today, we are jumping into a deep dive on a really gripping chapter from the story Chasing Death.
Specifically, we're looking at the events of the chapter called The Unseen Shield.
Yeah, and you really need to prepare yourself for a masterclass in tension today. We're talking about a high-stakes trial, a horrific execution, and this massive supernatural showdown where every expectation about power and authority and human survival just gets completely dismantled.
It's a profound collision of two entirely incompatible realities.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to set the scene first. So we've got this guy, Zayn. He claims to be just this ordinary trader from Africa.
Right, just a regular guy. Or so he says.
Yeah, exactly. And he is bound in heavy iron chains in this dark dungeon, about to face a royal court for a capital crime.
And on one side of this conflict, you have a kingdom that is entrenched in absolute authority, right? They have these ancient, brutal religious rites. Their whole societal structure is built on these unshakable rituals.
Yeah, it's their entire way of life.
Right. And on the other side, you have Zayn, this lone young man who claims allegiance only to what he calls the one true God.
And the friction between those two worldviews, it starts immediately in the royal court. They drag Zayn out of this heavy dungeon and into the glaring light of the throne room.
Which has to be so intimidating.
Oh, absolutely blinding and terrifying. And the high priest is standing there, practically shaking with righteous fury, pointing his finger at Zayn.
Because the accusation here is incredibly intense.
It is. Zayn apparently rescued a young widow named Lila, who is literally about to be burned alive on her deceased husband's funeral pyre.
And he killed a holy temple guard in the process of saving her.
Right. Which, brings us to the kingdom's mindset.
Yeah, we have to understand that to them, this isn't murder. It's a foundational, sacred right. It's divine law. The court firmly believes that women burning beside their husbands is the explicit will of the gods.
So by stopping it, Zayn isn't just breaking a law.
No, to disrupt that is a cosmic violation. It's sacrilege.
He's basically pulling a thread that could unravel their entire society. So the prince is sitting on his throne studying this guy, and he demands an answer. He says, "Do you deny this grave accusation?"
And Zayn doesn't even flinch.
No. He just calmly states, "No, Your Highness, I do not." I mean, it feels like he is intentionally provoking them.
Oh, for sure. He isn't just confessing. He's challenging the very premise of their authority.
Yeah, the audacity of it just sends this ripple of disbelief through the room. The Queen Mother even leans in, and she's genuinely baffled. She asks if he has any idea how terrible the punishment is going to be.
Because it's completely incomprehensible to them that someone could stand in the epicenter of their power and not be terrified.
But Zayn's response is fascinating. He tells her he is fully aware, but that he fears no one but the one true God.
He holds absolutely no dread of anyone else.
Right. But here is the part that really exposes the cracks in the kingdom's foundation. The high priest is screaming about sacrilege, right? And Zayn just calmly points out this massive, undeniable physical irony.
This is my favorite part of the trial.
It's so good. He tells the prince to ask the high priest why he tried 1,000 times to light that funeral pyre, yet the wood refused to catch fire even once.
It's a brilliant pivot. He uses their own physical reality to completely invalidate their theology.
It's like a massive system error in the kingdom's religious programming.
Yeah.
The universe is literally refusing to execute this girl. The pyre will not light.
But do they see it that way?
Of course not. Instead of taking the hint that maybe, just maybe, the gods don't actually want her to burn, the high priest frantically tries to patch the glitch.
Right. He accuses Zayn of casting a dark spell on the flames.
Yeah. Which brings us to the psychology of fanaticism.
This raises an important question, actually. How do fragile institutions react when their foundational rituals fail in front of an audience?
They double down.
Exactly. When the physical evidence, the unlit pyre, contradicts the high priest's worldview, he just cannot process it as divine intervention. Because if he admits the gods didn't want the fire to light, his entire authority collapses.
So he invents a scapegoat.
Yep. He labels Zayn a sorcerer.
And Zayn just smiles at the accusation. He simply says he's no sorcerer, just an ordinary man, but, arguing with a fanatic who's trying to save face is pointless.
Totally pitiless.
The prince sees Zayn refusing to play their game, and he delivers this exceptionally brutal decree. Tomorrow, Lila and Zayn are to be flayed alive, their skins stuffed with straw and hung at the city gates.
And the court erupts in gleeful applause.
Which is just chilling.
That applause tells you everything you need to know about how this society functions. Violence is celebrated, as long as it's framed as righteousness. It's a performance of power meant to terrorize anyone who might question the state.
But, philosophical debates and courtroom drama mean absolutely nothing when you're the one facing the blade.
Right.
That stoicism Zayn displays, it is immediately put to the test the second they throw him back into the dark. We leave the Grand Hall, we go back to the dungeon, and this is where the story just brilliantly grounds all these high-concept themes in really visceral, human emotion.
Because the night before the execution is agonizing.
Yeah, Zayn cannot sleep, but his anxiety has nothing to do with his own impending torture. He's consumed with worry for Lila.
She's a separate cell, right?
Yeah, completely isolated in the dark. He fears the sheer anticipation of the sentence might actually kill her with shock before the executioner even gets there.
And it's a crucial moment for the narrative. Without this quiet, agonizing night of terror, the supernatural events that happen later wouldn't carry any real emotional weight.
No, they'd just be a flashy action scene.
Right. The state's power relies entirely on that psychological torture. The physical execution is almost an afterthought. The real punishment is that night spent agonizing over it.
And when morning finally breaks, the physical toll on Lila is just devastating. They bring her out to the execution square, and she is a shell of a person.
Her complexion is a sallow yellow. She's weeping endlessly.
Yeah, it looks as though the sheer dread of a single night has melted the flesh right off her bones. She is frail, wasted, just hovering on the very edge of unconsciousness.
And she looks at Zayn.
With absolute hollow despair, she says, "These monsters will not let us live."
Which is an entirely rational reaction. She represents the completely understandable human response to absolute state terror. Her physical deterioration is the exact result the kingdom intended.
Yet Zayn meets that crushing despair with this profound peace. He doesn't offer, empty platitudes. He uses this beautiful, evocative imagery.
This very poetic moment.
It is. He tells her not to lose hope in the infinite mercy of the great God. He says, if he wills it, he can save a tiny infant from the most raging ocean storm. If he desires it, he can make flowers bloom in the driest desert and raise mighty mountains from the depths of the sea.
It creates this quiet bubble of tranquility right in the middle of a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, it really does.
And it serves as the perfect countermelody to the chaos that's about to unfold. Because we move very quickly from that quiet psychological dread into the deeply structured physical horror of the execution square.
Yeah, because they don't just execute people in this kingdom, they make a horrific spectacle of it.
It's all about sending a message.
Exactly. The prince is seated on his raised throne. The high priest thrusts his hand to the heavens, shouting this vile invocation about avenging the god's honor.
And then the executioner steps forward.
Yeah, he starts prepping Lila. He hacks away her hair with a cruel blade. And the method of flaying they use is designed to break the spirit in the most agonizing way imaginable.
It's hard to even listen to.
It is. It's an incision down the center of the scalp, severing the skin above the skull and tearing it slowly downward.
It's a highly ritualized, systematic method of inflicting maximum torment. The victim is meant to scream without end, serving as a visceral warning to the masses.
Right. But at this moment of absolute dread, Zayn realizes he cannot let this happen. He closes his eyes. He reaches out in his mind, calling out 3 times to this unseen divine entity, the goddess, sister of Baltus, pleading for intervention.
And suddenly, standing gracefully at his side, unseen by anyone else in the crowded square, a divine presence appears.
Okay, wait a minute. I have to push back on the text here for a second.
Yeah, sure.
Because Zayn literally just told the prince to his face, "I am no sorcerer, merely an ordinary man."
Right, he did.
But now he is telepathically summoning an invisible goddess in the middle of a crowded square to stop an execution. I mean, is he just splitting hairs on the definition of a warlock? Because to an outside observer, that looks exactly like magic.
It is a totally fair question. But this is where the fundamental mechanics of power in this universe diverge. It really comes down to the difference between commanding and petitioning.
Okay, explain that.
So Zayn isn't wielding magical power himself. He isn't bending the elements to his will or casting a spell by drawing on his own internal energy. He's making a desperate plea to an independent, higher power.
So he isn't casting a shield, he's basically making an emergency call to a vastly more powerful entity and asking them to step in.
Precisely. Zayn submits to the divine will. He doesn't control the outcome. And this contrasts sharply with the kingdom's view of magic.
Because they view it as transactional.
Exactly. Transactional and command-based. The kingdom believes magic is a tool you master, a weapon you wield to dominate others. But Zayn sees divine power as something you surrender to. He is not the shield the unseen entity is.
Wow. Okay, that distinction completely reframes the scene for me. So the entity smiles, promises to protect Lila without fail, and simply says, "Watch and see what I shall do."
And what's fascinating here is how the impending violence is totally inverted in the next few seconds. It is a masterclass in dismantling institutional arrogance.
Because the executioner is the ultimate agent of their control.
And that control is about to be violently and publicly broken.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The executioner raises his heavy blade high into the air. Lila lets out this blood-curdling scream. He swings the knife downward, aiming right for her scalp. Just as the metal is about to make contact, the blade is wrenched violently from his grip. It just clatters uselessly onto the stone floor, and the executioner is completely flustered.
Because he literally cannot comprehend what just happened. There is no framework in his mind for a weapon failing on its own.
No!
So like a breaking cog in a machine, he just resets and tries to perform his function again.
Yeah, he snatches up the blade for a second strike. He swings again, really putting his back into it. But this time, the knife tears itself from his hand, flies high into the air, and comes careening back down with this terrible, unnatural force.
It strikes his own shoulder.
Cleanly severs his neck, his head rolls across the stone floor, and the assembly completely loses their minds. Pandemonium erupts.
The philosophical weight of that visual cannot be overstated. The state's chosen instrument of terror has physically turned against the state's agent.
And notice how the kingdom reacts. When faced with an impossible, undeniable miracle, do they feel awe?
No.
Do they drop to their knees and reconsider their actions?
None at all. They feel sheer panic.
The prince leaps up from his throne, gasping, "What sorcery is this?" The high priest starts screaming that Zayn is a warlock and demands he be killed immediately.
So the prince roars a command to his guards.
Yeah, two soldiers charge at Zayn with swords drawn, swinging with all their might. But before the metal can even touch him, their swords are wrenched violently from their hands and just thrown aside.
The unseen presence is weaving absolute protection around him. But the state refuses to recognize it as anything other than an escalating threat.
The prince is frantic now. He orders a second wave. Guards surge forward with spears, intending to skewer Zayn where he stands.
And Zayn just stands there, completely serene.
He smiles at them, and suddenly the spears leap from the soldiers' hands, spin around in midair, and plunge brutally into the guards' own bodies. The soldiers are shrieking, writhing in pools of their own blood. I mean, the supernatural carnage is escalating at a terrifying pace.
Which brings us to a really fascinating display of cognitive dissonance. The physical weapons of the state have spectacularly failed. They've backfired and destroyed their wielders.
Right.
So how does an ancient institution try to reassert control? The Queen Mother throws up her hands and calls for a halt. She demands that the royal sorcerers face Zayn in a contest of magic.
It's a pure absurdity. They still don't get it. They treat this terrifying divine intervention as just another weapon to be countered with a bigger, flashier weapon.
They genuinely believe they just need to bring out a stronger wizard to fix the problem.
It's crazy.
They cannot process a reality where they are not at the top of the hierarchy. If Zayn's power is real, they assume it must follow their rules of engagement. They assume he has a master, a spellbook, some technique that can be beaten.
Which paves the way for the ultimate climax, the collision of mortal magic and divine protection. The prince commands the greatest sorcerer of the royal court to step forward. This man rises, bows to the throne, and turns his terrible blood-red eyes upon Zayn.
And he demands Zayn summon the spirit of his master and prepare for the first strike.
But Zayn, ever polite, declines the title again. He calmly states, "I am no sorcerer. I am merely a devoted worshiper of the one true God. I have no magical master."
The sorcerer sneers at him, challenging him to call upon his god to save him. And what follows is this incredible escalation of elemental forces. The royal sorcerer represents the absolute pinnacle of mortal commanded magic. He has spent a lifetime mastering these forces, and he throws everything he has at this calm young man.
Yeah, the sequence of events is wild. First, the sorcerer points a crooked finger, and a ferocious tongue of fire erupts from the earth. It twists and lunges toward Zayn, intending to incinerate him on the spot.
But Zayn doesn't champ.
He doesn't even brace himself. He simply makes a dismissive gesture with his hand. The towering flame vanishes instantly, snuffed out as cleanly as if a great bucket of water had been emptied over it.
The sheer mechanics of the effort involved are what make this goal so compelling. The sorcerer is burning immense internal energy to manipulate the physical realm. He's forcing the elements to obey him.
And Zayn?
Zayn, on the other hand, is exerting zero effort. He is simply asking the architect of reality to remove the anomaly.
It's like watching a guy furiously mashing all the buttons on a video game controller in a blind, sweating rage, right? Trying to execute this massive combo attack.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Zayn is just calmly reaching over and unplugging the console from the wall. The contrast is staggering.
That analogy perfectly captures the dynamic. The sorcerer isn't just failing. He's being humiliated by the lack of effort required to defeat him.
Which drives him crazy.
Exactly. Driven to absolute madness by this dismissal, he escalates.
He stomps his foot violently against the ground. The earth trembles, and a gargantuan tidal wave materializes out of thin air, surging forward to crush Zayn.
And Zayn doesn't flinch.
He just mirrors the gesture. He strikes his own heel against the earth, and the exact instant his foot touches the ground, the raging wave evaporates into harmless steam and drifts away. The courtiers are paralyzed. They are completely astounded by what they're witnessing.
You can really see the elemental progression here. Fire, then water. These are primal forces the sorcerer is trying to prove mastery over. But Zayn's subtle movements demonstrate that nature already has a master, and it certainly isn't the royal sorcerer.
So in a state of full-blown panic, the sorcerer tries a third time. He hurls his staff into the dirt, and the wood splinters and spawns thousands of venomous serpents.
Thousands of them.
Hissing, slithering vipers rushing en masse toward Zayn, and Zayn simply stamps his other foot. A monstrous python bursts from the soil and swallows every single viper whole in one vast, terrifying breath.
The sorcerer's entire worldview is collapsing in real time. Every tool, every spell, every ounce of power he has dedicated his life to acquiring is rendered entirely irrelevant.
He reaches for one final desperate spell. He's completely unhinged now, but before he can even unleash it, Zayn gives the unseen entity a subtle sign. And the conclusion to this grand duel is almost comically undignified for the kingdom's greatest weapon.
It is the ultimate deflation of institutional arrogance.
The sorcerer is suddenly seized by an invisible force, thrown into a violent somersault in midair, and left hanging completely upside down in empty space.
Just dangling there.
Stripped of all his dignity, weeping and wailing in terror, shrieking, "Spare me, forgive me."
The state's ultimate weapon is left dangling like a child's toy, begging for mercy. The battle is decidedly won, not through superior violence, but through the calm assertion of a higher reality.
So what does this all mean? The temper of the entire square shifts dramatically in the aftermath. The executioner is dead, the guards are dead, the sorcerer is humiliated.
And the high priest.
He's seething with impotent rage. Stripped of his power, he simply storms off the scene in a huff. But the prince, however, is deeply in awe. He waves Zayn closer to the throne.
But pay very close attention to the prince's final question. After everything he just witnessed, the pyre that refused to light, the executioner's blade reversing course, the effortless physics-defying dismissal of his greatest sorcerer, the prince looks at Zayn and asks, "Tell me, did you learn the supreme magic directly from the gods themselves?"
It is genuinely tragic. He still fundamentally misses the point.
He misses it entirely. It highlights a profound irony about human perception. The prince still categorizes Zayn as a warlock, utilizing supreme magic. He is entirely unable to comprehend Zayn's devotion to the one true God, or the concept of a power that isn't rooted in learned spells and mastery.
Even after all that.
The physical reality of the miracle was undeniable. The bodies were on the floor. The sorcerer was weeping in the air. But the prince's ideological framework simply couldn't absorb the truth of what it was.
He took this universe-shattering event and forced it right back into the only vocabulary he possessed. To him, Zayn can't be a humble petitioner of a higher power. He must be like a level 90 wizard who learned a secret spell.
Exactly. Because if the prince admits that Zayn's worldview is correct, it means the prince's own authority is an illusion. And that is a reality the state can never accept.
We started this conversation talking about expectations, right? We expect people on trial to defend themselves, to find a loophole, to operate within the established rules of the system in order to survive.
But Zayn didn't do that.
No, he didn't need to defend himself within their system because he brought an entirely different, untouchable reality into that courtroom. And when the verdict finally came down, the kingdom ultimately couldn't accept the ruling of their own universe.
He just couldn't see it.
So I want to leave you with this lingering thought to explore on your own. How often do we witness something that completely shatters our own worldview, only to immediately try and cram it back into a familiar, comfortable box? Our way, like the prince, missing the profound truth right in front of our eyes simply because it doesn't fit the vocabulary we are used to using? It is definitely something to ponder the next time you find yourself trying to explain away the unexplainable.